Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Duke Oishi.
And I'm your co-host, Nicole Hori.
In our show this time, we'll cover the Generational Marketing Shifts program recently presented by Hawaii Business Magazine at the Plaza Club.
It started with a keynote by Romascao, National President of AARP, followed by an important panel discussion on the subject.
The program began just after 7 a.m. on Wednesday, November 13th. Considering the hour, a remarkably large and animated audience showed up. The Plaza Club was crowded with attendees.
The program was intended to examine today's 6 living generations: the pre-depression generation, the depression generation, baby boomers, generations X, Y, and Z, the characteristics and behaviors of each, and marketing challenges and strategies required to reach each of them.
After introductions, Rob Romascao delivered the keynote address. As you'll see, he's an engaging speaker with a lot to tell about AARP and aging and elder policy in America, things we all ought to know about.
But let me give you some context about AARP, what we do, and why we have the views that we have about the challenges and opportunities that this country and, in fact, the world is facing as the population ages, not only here in the United States, especially here in Hawaii, but globally. We were founded in 1947, believe it or not, by a woman, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, who was the first woman who was a high school principal in the state of California. She retired at the age of 60 to take care of her aging mother. And one day she went to visit a friend, former colleague, and found her, she knocked on the door, was told that, she lives out back. And Ethel walked out back and found her colleague living in a chicken coop, because that's all she could afford on her pension and her crushing medical expenses. Remember, in 1947, there was no Medicare. So what did Ethel do? Well, Ethel basically became what is known as today as a social entrepreneur. She turned to the private market and said, how can we use the collective buying power of all the retired teachers and maybe figure out a way to get some health insurance for teachers as they retire? She went to 42 separate companies, as all entrepreneurs do, and got turned down. Number 43 said yes, and then the NRTA was born, which is the National Retired Teachers Association, and one of their main things was they supplied health insurance, a very modest health insurance program, using collective buying power to teachers. Well, the years went by and lots of different folks said, can I get in on this? I'm not a teacher, but I really need this. Again, no Medicare in our society. So in 1958, Ethel founded AARP, which at the time was known as the American Association of Retired Persons. We have since changed our name to simply AARP because a third of our members continue to work. Okay? So in 1958, Ethel founded AARP, and today we have staff, 2,400 staff. We have staff in every single state, and we have tens of thousands of volunteers. And our mission, very simply, using Ethel as our guide. Remember, Ethel started AARP at the age of 73. So for those of us still in our young 60s, there's still hope in terms of being able to develop a business and do something successful. And her basic idea was, look, let's think about aging differently than we have traditionally. And we are dedicated to helping each and every person live with dignity and purpose. And if you spend a little bit of time thinking about what dignity and purpose mean in our lives individually, it encompasses financial security, access to quality health care, and a lot of kitchen table issues that help us navigate our everyday lives. And since then, what we have done is develop a whole set of programs, both initiatives, and we're active in the marketplace, in the workplace, in the public square, and at your place, at your kitchen table. So our efforts in terms of fulfilling our mission find its way across almost every spectrum in America. We have a lot of different things that are going on. Most people know us as fighting to keep Social Security and Medicare on a solid footing. But we're also active at the state and local level, and we have many things going on here, and Barbara can fill you in on what we're doing here in the state of Hawaii. But we're active in protecting on consumer fraud. We're active in providing information on one of the biggest challenges everybody is facing in their families, which is caregiving, and how to get people the information and the resources of that. We have a foundation which last year provided free tax returns for over 2 million people across the country resulting in $1.3 billion in refunds for moderate and low-income folks, mostly seniors. We have a significant drive to end hunger among seniors, where 9 million seniors every night go to bed one incident away from food insecurity. So we're working hard on that issue. And a myriad of other issues, from utility rates to consumer fraud, to making sure we have balanced state investment in long-term care and home-based services, and as well, in many states, protecting the most precious right each and every one of you have, which is the right to vote. The unintended consequence of a lot of activity is disenfranchising literally hundreds of thousands of seniors with these ill-considered, quote-unquote, voter ID laws. So we think there's a lot of work to be done there. We've been active in 12 states across the country to protect that very precious right that each of us enjoys. So AARP has grown. It is, and we have 37 million members. As one person said to me, well, I couldn't get 37 million people to agree with what time of day it is. So we have a wide spectrum of opinion and many generations, right? 50 to 100. And that basically is the challenge that we want to bring forward and talk about today. I think one of the things that is probably evident to you all here, but not as evident in our sort of our public and policy dialogue, particularly in marketing circles, is the significant silver tsunami. There are websites up and people running around doing it, but the gravity and the significance of that shift, not only in the United States, especially here in Hawaii, but globally, is incontrovertible and unbelievable. Ethel, believe it or not, as a retired school teacher, was a pretty smart woman. And she knew that aging of the world's population would be transformational. And let me give you some dimensions to that, because that is all good marketers. You'll want to get some context and understand what's really going on, not only in your neighborhood, your community, the marketplace, but globally. Over the past 6 decades, the world has experienced only a modest increase in people over 60. It went from about 8 or 10%. Over the next 4 decades, this group is expected to rise to 22% of the total population, better than 1 in 5. And so in the world, we had about 800 million folks over 60. In the next 4 decades, it's going to be 2 billion people. 2 billion people. Now, when I went to business school, when you got up to about 2 billion, that looked like a market to me. Just kind of throwing that out there, right? Globally, life expectancy has increased by 2 decades since 1950, from 48 to 68. Today's 50-plus Americans can expect to live for at least 3 more decades. 3 more decades. I just had my first grandchild. I had nothing to do with it. My daughter did all the work, but I'm taking full credit for that, right? But what amazes me is she has a 50-50 chance to live to be 100. That's an amazing thing, right? An amazing thing. In wealthy industrial countries, life expectancy is 82 years, and in developing countries, it's 74, and the gap is closing. Meanwhile, fertility rates have plummeted, right?
After Rob Romascao's keynote, there was a panel discussion on the subject. The panel consisted of Todd Bowers of American Savings Bank, Tiffany Tanaka of Fresh Cafe, and Toby Tamae of @Marketing, and was moderated by Steve Petranek, editor of Hawaii Business Magazine.
In addition to all these generations, we got 6 of them that are alive today by my count. 6 generations, each of them a little bit different from the other. And then in addition, these marketing professionals must have the toughest job in the world. I thought my job was tough, but you've got to market to 6 generations, and these people participate and contribute and create in ways that are different than it's ever happened in history. 6 generations, all these segments in the market. How do you cope without breaking the bank?
I think first off, we don't try to market to 6 different generations. That's beyond our capacity. But we do worry about different groups. We need people who have money. We need people who spend money, and we need people who borrow money. Right? Basic structure of the bank. And I think the older group, the baby boomer generation, tends to be the group that's got money and spends money. They tend to support the sort of core historical structure of the bank, right? The branches, a lot of our traditional products. I think the sort of next generation, the Gen X group, has been the group that's really supported a lot of our newer initiatives and newer product development. So things like debit cards. You don't think of debit cards as really new, but they've really boomed only in the last 10 years or so. That's really Gen X, right? They're spending a lot of money. Or things like, for us, lines of credit, right? That's built really the Gen X generation. So we make a lot of our basic revenue structures from those two generations. I think Gen Y is the group we haven't figured out.
Toby, you were saying last week about getting people to change, and you said Generation X is really hard to get them to change their opinions. They're really set in their ways. But we talked about the possibilities of getting them. There are certain times when it's more possible to get them to change their minds. Can you talk about that?
So the main thing that we're looking at right now is to kind of identify the life need in this generation. And once you find this life need, there's really not a lot of brand affiliation as much as in the boomers, in the Gen X. And they're really about value. So you have to kind of identify really what is their need at that time of their life cycle and try to see how you can seek value. You know, the final thing is that the Gen X has so much different layers, and it's a really different life cycle from honeymoon to, you know, I told you about the different stages. So the hardest thing that we're really looking at right now is how do you identify the value in terms of each Gen X during their life cycle?
Well, some of the changes, having a child, I assume. You mentioned getting married, all those.
The hard thing about Gen X is that we're stuck in that age where we just graduate from college and we're partying for a living, and then we get boyfriend. I mean, so a lot of us are on Facebook, and we kind of see this I saw more people getting married this year on Facebook than I've ever seen. So I'm kind of in that age where people are gonna get married now, and so it's really, really interesting on how we're all in different generation patterns. Because I think the Gen X is actually the most complicated, because once you actually move from single to married to kids, I mean, your spending habits and how you actually absorb media is so different.
I'm very jealous because I go to a lot more funerals and weddings nowadays. But it's good. Tiffany, you've started this new business and you've really succeeded. I've heard this term content marketing. It seems to me that if you are a perfect example of content marketing, where you're telling a story, it's an interactive story, it's not a hard sell, and you use social media to get that. What was take us through that content marketing process. What was the story you were trying to tell, and why do you think it succeeded?
Well, I feel content marketing, it's always been around, but in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants to know what the latest thing is and the greatest thing and what's the talk of the town or a good story, but it's just communicated differently. Community is a very big thing for me, and I feel like it's been evolutionized through different ways. It started off from nail shops and beauty salons where women used to talk, and shoe shine places, to AOL chat rooms where there was different, like the knitting room and gardening room. I mean, I'm sure you guys have been in that before. And then now it's hashtags and online communities like Yelp and Uber and things like that.
Rumor has it that boomers and Generation X expect everything online to be free. And whereas millennials, because they've grown up in the culture, they sort of understand you got to pay for some of these things. True or false, and does that affect your marketing?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely find this to be true. I especially find it in this market. I've worked in a lot of other markets, and this sort of core of the market, at least for us in terms of banking, the Gen X and the baby boomer group, really, that part does expect things to be free, right? Free banking, free checking, free services across the board. If we want to have a promotion, the best thing we can do is do something free. That brings in hordes of people. And I think the silver lining for us around the next generation, the so-called Gen Y group, is they are more willing and do expect to pay for things.
The members of the panel had knowledge and strong experience with these generations and generational marketing, and we're ready to answer any question put to them, either by moderator Steve Petranek or by the audience.
For marketing, and in fact for an understanding of how our society works, we need to understand the nature of the various age groups moving through the bell curve. They're all different in their own way, and each has its own social and economic role and requirements.
We need to understand and predict the effects of each group on our community, not only for marketing to them, but also for planning how the community will need to develop in order to meet their needs and expectations.
Today, as never before, the business community has the technology to reach out to these groups and appeal to them in the marketplace. At the same time, these groups have the technology to exert significant influence in the marketplace and on politics and public policy.
However you look at it, in the 21st century, these age groups are forces to be reckoned with. And AARP, with 27 million members, starting at age 50, retired or not, is an organization that will help advocate for us in our senior years. As we live longer, this becomes all the more important.
The Generational Marketing Shifts program, as other programs in the Hawaii Business C-Suite series, was valuable and instructive to those who attended, especially corporate marketing officers from around our business community.
Good for Hawaii Business for organizing these programs. Programs like this are a public service, and we look forward to many more in the future. ThinkTech is pleased to be working with Hawaii Business on these programs. And now, let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 1 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech.
People are migrating to internet radio instead of conventional radio. There is equipment being developed and sold more and more every day to allow you to do that, especially in your car, which is the big market. It's where people listen to radio. The first thing that comes to mind is that all the new cars have what they call the auxiliary jack. And that means you can put a 3.5 millimeter 1/8 inch jack from your cell phone into the radio, and then push the auxiliary button, and whatever is coming out of your cell phone will play on the radio. Now, if you don't have a new car, then you need equipment that will enable you to do the same thing, to connect your cell phone to your radio. And customarily, the way that works is the device you buy receives the signal from your cell phone, either by Bluetooth or by one of those cables. They allow you to take the signal off your cell phone, broadcast it into the radio, play it on the radio very easily for cars that don't already have the auxiliary jack. What kind of equipment are you aware of?
Well, there's the Bluetooth devices. I personally use those. And then there's the ones that are, like you mentioned, are just the little transmitters. that just transmit the FM kind of connected to your phone via the cord. Other than that, I think there are a few others. I'm sure there's other techniques, like with the newer cars. You said it's just on board. Just connect. You just connect your phone to it.
Radio Shack has both of these devices. Best Buy has them.
Sure.
A lot of telephone stores are going to have, cell phone stores are going to have them. And in terms of mail order, they are everywhere. So we've got to get over the hump. We've got to learn about this technology, start using it. But the next issue, which is really important, is how do you get the streaming audio from the web onto your phone?
I use podcast programs, so I'll open up a program. There's a bunch out there. iHeartRadio, I think, is one of the bigger ones. There's also iTunes if you're subscribing to those things. There's all kinds. And in particular for ThinkTech Hawaii, we're right now using Spreaker, so you would get those apps on your phone and play the show through those, and then transmit it via the cord or Bluetooth to your radio.
You can go on our ThinkTechHawaii.com widget that you can download from our site onto your phone, and it's on the home page of our site. The address is m.thinktechhawaii.com, and if you can put that widget on your phone, it's like an app. Because all you have to do is click on the widget, and now it'll let you do either video streaming or audio streaming. The other way is to go to Spreaker, which is also a pick on the menu for ThinkTechHawaii.com, the mobile version, and you can get directly from Spreaker the audio file. And not only that, but it's got a smart button there where you click the button and it will either give you what's playing right now or the last thing that did play. The benefit of the video under Ustream, the Ustream button on our site, our mobile site, is that it's going to give you the shuffle. It's going to give you our playlist, which goes 24/7, is always running. You can look at that on your computer too.
Essentially, the Spreaker recorded one up there is now officially a podcast at that point. Once it's recorded and it's available 24/7 on demand, it's now a podcast.
The one that's already there right now on the Spreaker.com. Yeah. And you can just go on a browser too, on your phone. I mean, if your phone is fast enough, it just takes a second to get there. And you can go to ThinkTechHawaii.com. It has links to both Ustream and Spreaker, and then you can play whatever you want on the phone, and thus on the radio in your car. Get really good internet digital quality sound on it, which is better than you can do for a lot of stations that are broadcast.
I agree.
On conventional radio. Get on the movement now, and come to internet radio. Come to ThinkTech Internet Radio on your phone and connected to your car. And when you're stuck in traffic, think of us, listen to us. ThinkTechHawaii.com. Thank you, Ian.
And now, here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
So, Bill, we're having a Startup Paradise Demo Day. What's going on? What's going to happen on that one?
Well, all the organizations that are focused on building our entrepreneurial community, especially in energy and tech, have come together and characterize Hawaii as a startup paradise. And that's because we really do have a lot of activity going on. First, there's Blue Startups, which is the first and foremost accelerator program in Hawaii. We're in our second cohort now, which means our second class of entrepreneurial teams. And then there's the Energy Accelerator, which, as you recall, got $30 million of funding to put into energy startups.
Yeah, we had him on our show here.
Yeah.
Dawn Lippert was here to discuss
Dawn, and they've just funded 15 entrepreneurs to get them off the ground and running. So on Demo Day, on December 4th, at the Waikiki Sheraton in the afternoon, it's part of the Venture Capital Summit, but the whole afternoon is going to be devoted to letting these teams pitch their business plans. So we're hoping to get some angel investors there and some venture capital guys there, as well as the community, to support these entrepreneurs, because as you know, the venture accelerator process involves going from idea to actually having a product or a service within 3 months. which is what it's all about these days, rapid deployment. And we have some great teams, I can tell you, because I'm a mentor for one of the teams. And it's a lot of excitement. And they're all pitching and practicing their pitch and testing their products. And it's going to be very exciting. So I encourage everybody out there to come to the VC Summit December 4th, and especially come to Startup Paradise Demo Day. It'll be great.
How do they find out more? Is there a website, a place to sign up?
You can go to hvca.org. There's a link to the Eventbrite registration page.
Okay, Bill.
All
See
right.
you there.
See you there.
Thanks.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle & Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
The Foreign Trade Zone, operated by the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, encourages international trading in Hawaii and brings the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs.
Okay, Nicole, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Jay Fidel does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
Definitely, Duke. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech and OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be an underwriter, a sponsor, or a volunteer, and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Duke Oishi. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Nicole Hori. See you next time.